guys? I'm back, and it's now for our second episode of the day, Thor: Love and Thunder, our spoiler review, as you can see right here. If you want to check out our Stranger Things video, I did that earlier today. That is up now. You could watch a recorded version of Stranger Things. You're also still welcome to leave a comment at any given time. That'd be great. Also, I introduced the newest version of the comic pull list, new comic books in 5 minutes. I'm giving you comic books in 5 minutes, the new books that are coming out for July 13th to get your pull list ready. And next week, I have a Miss Marvel spoiler review, and I'm excited for the guests that are going to be that in that show. But without further ado, we're going to do our Thor Love and Thunder spoiler review. Again, this is going to be a spoiler review for Love and Thunder, and with me, Achilles, what's up, man?
so excited to go ahead and talk about this movie.
Yes, we are both excited to talk about Love and Thunder. We saw it this afternoon. I saw it like at 3 o'clock my time. What about you?
I saw it. It was like a 5:15 thing. I ended up watching. I was gonna see the 3 o'clock and say, "Oh, I got a little bit more time. I can go ahead." And
you got a little buffer time. I didn't have a buffer time, unfortunately. I had to like watch this movie and stuff like that, and I was doing other things as well. So I was like in the process of doing 101 things. Not to mention, it is my daughter's birthday, Phoenix. So happy birthday, Phoenix! I'm letting her know in the video. She's doing something over there. We gave her a little bit of cake. We sang her happy birthday. She's excited. We're gonna do stuff for the weekend for her birthday. So yes, happy birthday, Phoenix. So let's go ahead and let's start talking a little bit about Thor: Love and Thunder. This is going to be a spoiler review, but before we get into spoilers, guys, excuse me, Achilles, your overall first take of the movie, spoiler free.
Am I rating it, or do we save the ratings?
Well, we'll save the ratings for later. For your overall reaction to the movie.
I thought it was a fun movie. It was fun. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it wasn't, the whole like, wow, I can't believe, that this is happening in the Marvel universe, this big like giant surprises and stuff like that. I didn't walk away feeling wowed, but it was a fun movie.
Yeah, I agree with you. I out of the Marvel Cinematic movies that have been out, I would say this one still was ranked on one of the good ones. It was not a bad movie to say the least. It wasn't, but it wasn't Endgame either. All right, so and that's fine. And I think that's we could have those movies, right? I think the movie as it's in itself serves a really good point of where we are with Thor in particular, right? So the movie, without giving too much away, starts off with Thor. And if anybody watched the Endgame movie, you would know Thor is with the Guardians of the Galaxy. So we get a little bit of the Guardians of the Galaxy and what they're doing together, and how Thor has moved on in some way, right? But without giving too much away, we as already told in the trailers and things like that, he meets up with Jane, and they're off to a mission to face Gore the God Butcher. That's all we're gonna give you as far as non-spoiler. All this is in the trailer, so I wouldn't call it a spoiler. So overall, what do you think about the cast of characters as a whole?
I thought that the cast was really strong as far as like the actual actors that they brought in, that are new, and also bringing back some old favorites. And I like what you said in terms of like what the purpose of this movie. One of the things that it does serve is that Thor's character really gets stretched in so many different directions from his own movies and in Endgame and stuff like that, that he makes all these different appearances, Infinity War. So his identity, who he was, it was just, he physically kept changing, right? Mm-hmm. But his purpose and who he was. So this movie did a really, with that in mind, did a really great job of us, like, the Thor we get at the end at least is something really solid and clear as to who he is and his purpose.
Yeah. So with that being said, guys, that's as much as we could possibly give you without spoiling too much away. So this is your spoiler warning. Again, if you have not seen Thor: Love and Thunder and you don't want to be spoiled, because trust me, we are going to spoil the living crap out of this movie, because there's a lot to talk about right from the get go, right from the beginning. I got Andrew asking me, he's gonna go check out the Stranger Things video. Yeah, go check out the Stranger Things, Andrew. Um, so while you're watching, while we do the Thor one. So again, if you haven't watched Thor and you don't want to be spoiled, now is not the time to watch this. But there's some of you that don't care about spoilers. In fact, you want to know the spoilers before you go in, because we do have spoilers. We're going to spoil the plot of the story. We're going to spoil some of the characters that show up in the story. We're going to spoil the end credits. We're going to spoil everything we possibly could think of in the time that we're going to be doing this, which is just under about an hour. I'm going to hopefully we'll stick to 45 minutes today. All right. So with that said, let's go back to this slide here. We kick off. Actually, we don't kick off with Thor. We kick off, which right from the get-go, we kick off with Gore the God Butcher before he was the God Butcher. So Achilles, let me in on Gore, and I'll talk a little bit about the comic version, but what you saw in the movie.
Well, what I saw in the movie, Christian Bale's playing the character, right? So he's got that role. I liked him and his portrayal and what he was doing. And it was interesting to finally to get something very, very specific about how these gods, which you get a lot of times in comics and some of the movies, the gods require worship, right? So I like that they brought that in. The guy who plays the god that he was worshiping, okay, I don't know who that
I don't know who it was either. It's a hard one for me to remember. I was trying to figure it out, to tell you the truth, but I couldn't pinpoint it.
Yeah, and he was like that, and this scene for me is actually a good indication. I didn't realize it at the time, but a good indication of how the rest of this was going to, how the rest of the movie was going to be, because he was like the god of light and something like that, right?
Yeah.
But then the other gods or creatures, whatever they were behind him. They were like, one was like made of flowers and stuff.
So there was two made of flowers. So like,
yeah, and it was like, it was funny, it was light, it was kind of all this kind of stuff, and I this just the character who's the god that Gore was worshiping didn't seem very godlike to me at all.
No, and that was the point. That was the point to the story, and really the point that Gore was trying to bring across. The whole concept behind the Gore the God Butcher, which was very accurate to the comic book version. I don't know if you're familiar with the comic book version. Gore the God Butcher, his character was, in fact, he worshipped this specific god, him and his people. So they were part of this group, this religious group, who, kind of like with a tribe in particular. They were part of a tribe, and they pray to this deity, and nothing. They get nothing. And he's in his last dying breath alongside his daughter, which is going to prove to be an important piece of the puzzle at the end of the movie. And all he wants is for his daughter to live. And unfortunately she dies, and he comes across the necromancer. Now, are you familiar with the necromancer sword?
Okay. No. I didn't actually read. I read very, very little of Thor.
Yeah, it's this particular storyline came in the 2000s, so it's not a old storyline in comparison to the other storylines that we've heard in the comics. He comes across this sword, and I'm happy that they brought the sword into the story. And the sword has the ability to kill gods. Thus, the reason why he was called the God Butcher. But like most things, it corrupted him. And while being corrupted, he stood true to what he learned about gods. And according to the way this movie puts it out, he's completely right. He was completely right that they never cared for people. They want the worship, but they don't care for them.
In terms of the god that he specifically was worshiping, that specific one laughed in his face and was like, "I don't care."
Mm-hmm. So, I would say, without going too far into talking about Christian Bale, because I want to talk about him some more. Um, what a performance! Like,
Yeah.
I, it's almost as if he was like, let me channel some Heath Ledger into my character and see what I could do. You know what I mean? And not to say
And
that he was Heath
I
Ledger.
and that's kind of where I felt a little cheated, was that his performance, Christian Bale's performance, was so strong and really grounded, and he was playing off of someone who I felt like he was taking a completely different tone.
Hmm. Yeah, and out of all the characters, he was the most serious. Even though he had his quips too, right?
Yeah, yeah.
He had his quips because this is a Taika Waititi movie. So, like a Taika Waititi movie, it's gonna have quips. But he was justified in his actions, I would say. But it was still evil in evil intentions at the end, right? He pretty much wanted revenge. He was like, if they're not gonna do what they should be doing, then you know what, they shouldn't be around to begin with, and that's what I see. What's up, Lenny? You just watched it. Awesome. Well, you could definitely talk to us a little bit about it in the comments. So we'll definitely talk more about it. But yeah, he was justifying his actions. The comic book version was pretty much exactly the same way. It was beat for beat, pretty much exactly the same way. Um, and I have nothing bad to say about his performance. In fact, he stole the show every time he was up. When the way he treated the kids was like, "Ugh, I'm scared of this guy." You know what I mean?
He was a really really solid villain.
Yeah.
I really liked his performance and what they did with him, and that somewhat unapologetic
Hmm.
thing, and you knew where he was coming from. So he was definitely, like you said, he stole the show.
Hmm. But now let's get to the to we that was our opening scene. Now we get to the scene where we get to find out what Thor's been up to. Now Thor has been with the Guardians of the Galaxy, right? And I have to say, the comedy starts right in the beginning. I love their scenes together. How he takes them to this planet, and in the planet, he's trying to find an inner Zen moment while the rest of the Guardians are fighting these other aliens that try to take over the planet of this area. What's your thoughts about that particular arc, that story that we were getting?
I it was funny. It felt really rushed. I
Hmm.
don't know, because with the Guardians there was like so many characters, and it was so, I was like, I don't know if there was more of it and they just edited it down. I'm not 100% sure,
Hmm.
but it felt to me a little bit rushed. But I did like where they picked up with Thor's character, him trying to be Zen and so forth. That really fell in line with the last time we saw him, and him wearing the robe and just trying to, like,
Yeah.
yeah. So I liked it, but something about it for me felt very rushed. And even when they were leaving, it all felt like, okay, was it necessary? Is what I guess my
Yeah,
question.
they was like they were trying to hit the beats to get let's it was more to the point that when last it was more like where last you left off, this is where Thor was. But I do like that they did it though. I felt sometimes movies, they have a tendency of ending one episode, or one part ends a certain way, and then when you get to the next part, it's like, yeah, all of this thing already happened and behind the scenes, and we don't get to see it. In this
Well,
case, we got to see it.
do you think it would have been, for in my mind, it would have been a little bit cleaner and stronger if maybe he was on that planet with the Rocky Raccoon and Groot, let's say, just the two of them, and then the spaceship comes with the other Guardians. They collect those two guys and they take off. Like, there was just so many of them that I
Yeah.
think if it had just been less, then you could have, like, let the scene breathe a little more instead of trying to have everybody get their beats in or get their quip.
Yeah, it could have. I think that could have happened. But again, I'm not complaining about how it happened now, because I like. First of all, I love seeing those Guardians characters.
Oh,
It made
I love them. I love them.
it made me want to. It makes me want to see Volume 3 when it comes out. It makes me want to see the holiday special that's supposed to come out. Um, so I'm excited for that, because We learned that Crackle gets married in every planet he's in, which I thought that was fun. I was like, oh, he's like, I'm married again. And I'm like, dude, you can't get married everywhere you go. So
Yeah,
I thought that was
they're
great.
definitely one of my favorites with the Marvel Universe. I never read their comics. I
I,
have
I
them,
I
but it's
love Mantis. How Mantis still has this very much this childlike characteristics, and she tried to copy everybody. So she's with the gun, and she's like, so I love that. Nebula is sick and tired of Thor, so just like whatever, get out of here, get out of my face.
so
So
so then the Gamora, because Gamora wasn't there, I don't think.
nope, she's still gone because
But
remember.
but did it wasn't there the Gamora that they got from the other
So, in at the end of Endgame, the Gamora that is around today is the Gamora from 5 years prior.
right.
Well, more than 5 years, I think like 8 years prior. So that Gamora never experienced or never met the Guardians. She never
Well,
met the
she in
Guardians.
Endgame she meets it because she kicks, Star Lord
Yeah,
in the nuts and all that. Like so she
she knows about him,
right. But
but
where
she
did she
doesn't know
go?
him.
I guess.
That's the thing. That's pretty much where Guardians 3 is supposed to do.
Okay.
Guardians 3 is supposed to be the search. It's supposed to be the search for Gamora. Um,
Okay.
so that's why she wasn't present here, um, and rightfully so. She shouldn't be present. I think her story deserves its time. So the fact that she wasn't there, I'm fine with that. I love the way this guy, Chris Pratt's character Star Lord tries to give him a pep talk. Well, some days you feel this way, and then I like being this way better than this way. you know,
Well, I mean,
you know,
and Chris Pratt, because of the whole thing with Gamora, I'm like, who better to try to give him advice of like you got to move on and just keep on pushing and whatever than for Star Lord to do it.
yeah.
And funny to see Thor having so much affection for Star Lord when Star Lord obviously was so threatened by Thor's presence.
And he still is because right, they honestly want to get rid of him. That's the
Yeah,
funny
oh
part about it.
for sure.
They definitely don't want him around. But what's interesting enough is that they they want to get rid of him. I don't know if the reason being is that he's annoying or the fact that he's just too damn good, if you know what I mean. Because again, they're fighting this battle while he's trying to be Zen. He shows up, he takes off his robe, it reveals his biker look, right? And he tears that group a whole new one by
Well, I mean,
himself, pretty much.
truth be told, like he brings in these goats. You know what I'm saying? The goats was tearing up the ship. They were all annoyed
Oh,
by
but the goats was a present because of the group, right?
because of the group. But when because Nebula's like, I'll just put them down. It's like, no, you can't. Blah blah. Blah. So Thor moves through life very differently than the way that the Guardians of the Galaxy do. So I'm sure they're like, okay, you've outstayed
I'll
welcome.
I'll say well,
We
you're
need to
welcome.
drop you off.
Exactly.
Because at first Starlord was the only one who kind of had that beef with him and felt threatened. The rest of them were perfectly fine with him. But the goats was a really nice. That was the
Oh,
one
those
good thing I
goats
was
are
about
the
those
best.
goats. That it was a nice way for them to have a reason that they wanted to just kind of dump them off.
Those goats are awesome. I love those goats.
They were funny. I think that it was overused, but
Yeah, there was some moments that there was maybe too much goats.
they were. Yeah, I felt it was too much. But I at that point I thought it was hilarious.
It was hilarious. So again, he also gets the distress call about what's going on in New Asgard. And when he goes to New Asgard, apparent. Oh, you know what? Before we go there, because I do want to talk a little bit more about Jane. Let's go to Jane since we are going to talk about Jane Foster. We also get a little. We get a little where she's been, where are they now? Scene with Jane Foster, and it's nice we get to see Denning's character come back. Um, and it turns out she's going through chemotherapy um, because she has stage 4 cancer. Now, we talked a little bit before the show about this. The comic books definitely do the subject of stage 4 cancer in a much somber tone. Here, it didn't have that somber tone. Here was very much you got stage 4. You got to take care of yourself. but it was also like I still want to work. I still want to do things. I still want to do right, but it wasn't. It didn't feel It didn't feel as somber as it probably did. So,
Well, but
what?
the tone when she's there with Kat Dennings' character and so forth, and they're talking and she's getting the chemo, the tone was unlike the rest of the movie, but the tone was serious. It wasn't
Yes.
somber, but it was serious.
Hmm.
So then I felt like, okay, so this is the tone we're going with for that subject matter for the cancer at that point in time.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, what do you thought about them about adding the cancer scene? Because again, the cancer scenario is how she becomes Mighty Thor. There is some truth to it. But what
I
was your
mean,
thought about
well, first of all, having that scene was crucial because if they didn't have that scene,
it? Hmm.
if they just showed her, later on staring at the book and then, popping up as, a, a Thor in her own right, then the movie would not have contained at any real serious cancer moment other than her thinking back to, her childhood. So at least that scene that they put with her and her friend, and she's there getting the chemo.
Darcy, that's the name, Darcy.
Darcy, right? So
Yeah.
at least that part to me was crucial in order for them to almost not be making real light of the subject of cancer. Like
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of serious, and both actresses did a fantastic job with it.
Yeah, and the fact that they were also going to the notion that this was uncurable. They didn't tell us what type of cancer it was in the comic books. It was, I believe, it was breast cancer that she was suffering through, and the comic books revealed it afterwards. We in the comic books we learned about Mighty Thor first. Don't call her Lady Thor, Mighty Thor, right? We learned
Yes.
about Mighty Thor. In the comic book, she was Mighty Thor first, and then it was revealed that it was Jane Foster, and then it was revealed that she was also suffering from cancer. Um, Here, it went the other way around. Here, the story was she's suffering from cancer, and she learns that somehow Mjolnir, the hammer, Thor's hammer, has the ability to help her, but in fact, it doesn't. Um, and the same thing would be said in the comic books. Again, they took it from the comic books, the same scenario. Every time she wields Mjolnir and she becomes the mighty Thor, it takes away her energy, and it actually enhances the cancer. So the cancer continues to spread, makes it worse. So she gets sicker, and they definitely touched it on this in this movie. Um, but it turns out that Mjolnir called out to her, so she goes to New Asgard, and in New Asgard, we get to see everything that's going on there. What's your thought of New Asgard? Because there was
Um,
a lot of good stuff there.
Let me tell you, New Asgard to me looked like um a ghetto Harry Potter type. I mean, it just was. It was odd. I was like, this is just all very odd. To me, it felt inconsistent. Like I felt like there's this one part of New Asgard. There was like the courtyard or whatever, and they always came back to that central shot now, which is
Yeah.
fine because I don't think the village is necessarily that big, right? But inside the homes where you see the kids, it all looked like it may as well have been New Jersey. But then on the outside, then you get these Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings type vibes and stuff like that. So I felt that it was inconsistent as far as all
It
the
was
messages.
very it was a hybrid of Asgard and a village in Norway and, like he said, New Jersey.
Right. And you're going to do a hybrid. That's fine. But then I felt that there should have been some ways where it felt where I could at least understand where one thing ends and the other thing begins. Because why is the outside looking like, this is a village of Shrek, and then on the inside it looks like it's just something from Gossip Girl. Like I just couldn't help it make any sense. So I didn't I wasn't too keen on it. I was trying to remember in the other movies, like even in Endgame, I was like, what did New Asgard look like? I was trying. For the life of me, I was like, I
Yeah,
felt.
so New Asgard comes from the Straczynski storyline. I forgot who did the art. I don't. It was, oh no, Oliver Coipel did the art for the Straczynski. So it was a reboot. Let's not talk about reboots in comics. It's a
Well,
relaunch of
but
Thor.
in Endgame, when they go to get Thor,
Mhm.
um, when Rocky Raccoon goes down there and the Hulk, they go to get him. You see New Asgard, and where you see him playing video games, that to me was a good hybrid because the way his house looked, where Thor was staying, kind
Mhm.
of still had that medieval look to it,
Yeah.
and yet it didn't feel so bizarre that he was also in there playing video games and talking to somebody on the thing. And yet in this movie, Love and Thunder, the hybrid part just didn't work for me.
Yeah, and it becomes a tourist attraction.
Yes,
It becomes
exactly.
a tourist attraction, which I love because we got to see a reprisal of their roles. We get Luke Helmsworth, Thor's actual brother.
Yes.
Luke Helmsworth playing the actor Thor, and of course we get Matt Damon returning as Loki, and they retell the story of the death of Odin, which to me was it was so on the money.
Well,
Like
Melissa McCarthy.
yes, I was gonna just say that, and to have the reveal of Hela coming in to be Melissa McCartney. I just love the fact when Odin dies, he had like glitter, and he was like, "Ooh, glitter," to sparkle away.
Yeah, and you see, and for me, I felt like this was something that Ragnarok did really well. In here, it was a little tricky. I felt might not have been as executed as well. But that play that they did, where you have, like Matt Damon and all that kind of stuff, that's where you can really play up the humor because it is them putting on a play. It is a performance and so forth, and you can get the laughs there as opposed to making the main characters have to deliver all those jokes. You could have let them be a bit more serious. But that to me was definitely a highlight, having those
Oh,
three actors. And I was like, good on Melissa McCarthy to
four,
that
because
casting.
the
And
guy who was
the
playing the Odin too. So the fourth actors.
yeah, yeah. And all four of those to me, that casting was phenomenal. And I liked it. It was just really, really good.
Yeah, but that we don't the cameos don't stop there. We also have a tour guy returning. Do you know who the tour guy was? See, because
Wait,
that's a bit of a deep cut. But let's see
who's
if
the
you
tour?
remember.
I don't
Okay,
remember.
so if you remember in Civil War, it was Team Cap, Team Iron Man. So they decided to do a comedic tone with Team Thor. And what happens was in the Team Thor, it's a short, it's one of those comedic shorts that was on YouTube. Team Thor ended up moving to Australia, and he ended up getting a roommate. You have to check them out, Achilles. If you haven't seen them, go check them out. They're hilarious.
Oh,
Uh,
I remember something about a video and him having a roommate, and I didn't realize that was actually part of anything of whatever.
so the roommate is the tour guy, and his name is Daryl. So Daryl is in the movie as he is now a tour guide in New Asgard, which I thought was brilliant to bring him in.
That is awesome because we had said before it's like this isn't Endgame, and why should it be, right? Because Endgame is a whole different type of thing. But in terms of the Thor franchise, like they really pull in, with the exception of like Loki, right? But they pull in all these different elements of what they've created in this world in a really good way. And for that, like you said, that's a deep cut. Like I had
That's
no
a deep
idea.
cut. Go check out. If you guys haven't seen it, go check out Team Thor. And also, there's a sequel to that one, which is I believe it's Team Daryl,
Okay.
right? And they make another reference of it in the movie where they do Team Jane as well. So I'm hoping that we'll get some more of those. Fingers crossed that Taika, if you're watching, I want to see more of that. I want to see Team Jane. I want to see Team Valkyrie. Valkyrie, who's the king of Asgard, she's learning fast that it was not all that it was cracked up to be. Being
Yeah.
a king, right? She learns very fast. Thor comes in because, of course, he hears what happened. Lady Sif makes a cameo as well. Apparently, she was almost killed by Gore. She survived. She lost an arm in the process, but she survived. They take her to New Asgard, in which she is treated, and we see her later at the end of the movie. But she's treated, so it brings him there, and at this moment, New Asgard is being attacked by Gore, who in turns his mission was to kidnap the children. He's successful in kidnapping the children, But this is where we get our first full appearance of Natalie Portman as Mighty Thor.
Okay,
And
quick
what an
question.
opening.
Were you at all thrown off by the fact that Gore's in there, Thor shows up fighting, and then Natalie Portman shows up, right? Well, Jane shows up as her Thor. There's all this fighting, and then when Gore goes for the children, some of these children apparently are still sleeping. Just to me, I was like, I put that down as like one of the most confusing things, because some kids were looking out the window like, oh my god. I was like, but this is two Thors, Gore and Valkyrie, all battling it up with all these creatures, and some of these kids were like dead asleep. So I for me, that really kind of threw me. I don't know if I was the only one.
I could tell you one thing. There are children who are watching the movie, who will be watching this movie, and they will be going to bed, and they'll be scared that Gore is going to get them. Because that was frightening, man.
Yes, watching these kids while they sleep, getting snatched out or whatever and so forth. That did throw me.
Yeah, and the fact that they're coming through the shadows. So as a kid, you see a shadow. Oh no, Gore's coming to get me. I know that's gonna happen. But they get to see each other. And what I love about Thor in particular is that he's so there's a term for his it's not sensitivity, but he is sensitive. And the fact that insecurities. His insecurities, that when he sees this Thor, he immediately like, oh no, she's wearing a helmet. Oh, I gotta create a new uniform as a result.
Yes.
Which is taken out of the Walter Simonson's run, where the uniform that he created from one of the 80s stories was to protect him because he was weakened. So the costume actually served a purpose in the comic books. Here, it was just a device to show his insecurities, which again he had him with Star-Lord, with Peter Quill's Star-Lord, and again he's having it again with this version of Thor, which he still doesn't know who it is.
Well, he even had the insecurity in Age of Ultron when Captain America was going to try to pick up that hammer.
Yeah. So he's always been that way, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I love the consistency of his insecurities, right? It's the fact that he's not he is confident, but he's not always confident, right? And he has that, like, if you're better than me mentality. Like, he has a lot of machismo when it comes to that. That's probably even a better term than the insecurities, right? But it is machismo, right? But he creates this ridiculous helmet, which again stems from the comic book, which I absolutely love. So he sees her. She gets the helmet. He immediately sees her, and it's like, Jane? While the house is burning down.
Oh my god! Yeah, exactly. People are still fighting. They're still fighting,
and they're just looking at each other, right? And she's doing it, and then he's like, I gotta take this stupid helmet off because he couldn't do anything with it. And it's funny because it's her first. So apparently, Valkyrie, who we see here in this image, she kind of knew what happened already. So she was well aware of Jane turning into Mighty Thor. That's something that they didn't. It's funny, but yeah, I agree with Derpy. So Derpy, yeah. So it's funny, but problems, right? There are a few. I don't think too much. I wouldn't say there's too many problems. It's just that there is a level of comedy over storytelling, that comes into play, right? There's moments that it should be a little more. It should be serious, but it's not.
Well, and to be honest, I really, really wish, because I don't think it was needed. I wish that they hadn't shown Jane as Thor in the previews. I would have loved to have had that been a surprise. People were going to see this movie anyway. Like, I just couldn't understand.
I'm with you on that. I agree with you, but we're in the era that you got to show it.
I don't.
In this particular instance, yes, because if she's getting title building, remember, this is not a movie. This is not a Chris Hemsworth movie by himself. She's getting title buildings. If you see her, it's like, oh, we're just gonna we're gonna show scenes of her with cancer.
Yes,
but that's the point. Anyone who knows will know.
Well,
it's not that much of a secret.
People who read the comics and whatever, sure, but I had no idea. I didn't read those comics.
I think I think the thing is that it's more on the lines. It wasn't about her journey to becoming Mighty Thor. I think it was the journey of them finding their love. So that's why what it didn't matter as much, because we did get some really good reveals. Not a lot, but we did get a good reveal at the end, which I like. Two of them actually.
You mean the end credit?
One of them was an end credit. The other one was part of the device to the movie.
I guess when we get to that, you can let me know
Yeah, I'll tell you what it was.
of what that
What what Gore's mission was.
what his
Gore. So Gore's mission, what to do, and what he wanted to do, which had to do. I'll say it right now. We're in spoiler territory, guys. Um, Eternity.
Oh, and you know what? Eternity, when I saw that thing, I'm like, the only time I have ever seen that being, that character, was in the Marvel Universe handbook, where you
Eternity is
just saw
interesting.
all these different characters. And I remember seeing this galaxy, spacey looking, whatever. That's the only time I've ever seen that character. So when I saw this movie, I'm like, okay, well, obviously it's something from the comics that are short.
Mhm.
And it was cool to see. I always thought that was like, the Watcher's cousin for all I knew.
Oh no, definitely not Watcher's cousin. We live in eternity, and in Marvel comics lore, eternity is exactly what it sounds like. It is the embodiment of the
Of every,
galaxies. Yes.
okay.
So outside of eternity is where the Celestials live, right? So we are part of eternity. We are inhabited in within eternity. So anytime you come out of eternity, you are no longer part. So you're not part of space and time or anything like that. You're outside of that. So you're like in a completely different realm, which is very interesting and very Jack Kirby. You got to get into the
Yes.
mind
Oh,
of
yeah.
Jack Kirby with that, because again, like Ragnarok, this holds so much Kirbyism that it's not even funny. Which I love every part of it. Um, let's go ahead and see what Derby had to say. Um, I find somebody that did not like Ragnarok. That is very interesting, but I respect that. Um, yes, there are just jokes over storytelling, but I do say it is worth a watch. So, Derby, if you were watching, I will still go see the movie. I want to see the movie again because I did enjoy it. Personally, I love Taika Waititi. He is a great director. He has a very good sensibility. He writes characters so well. And since I'm on the topic of Taika Waititi, let's talk about Korg and Valkyrie.
Oh my god.
Korg serves to us as a bit of a narrator, right, to the story. And every time he tells the story, he has this way of telling the story that it doesn't have a again, it's comedic, but it's him being himself, right? It's like your friend telling you a story, and they're telling it their version, right? Instead of trying to be this writer, he's just
Right.
telling it.
He has his own spin. He's putting his
Yeah,
own spin on it.
he's
Sure.
old spin, right? Which I love the way he just says it. Is like and then there's Thor and his ex girlfriend Jane, who's now the new Thor, and I love how he explains how Thor goes from dad bod to god bod and all that stuff. So all that is it. His the way he's explaining it. He's explaining how his his family is created. So he talks a little bit about how he was
Oh
formed.
my god. Yeah. I mean,
and the,
well, I mean, this for me is something that I try to figure out. There is a difference between something being quote unquote wrong and then something just not being for me, right?
Mhm.
So I'm like, what was the intention for the movie? And the movie obviously lighthearted. It was fun. They had the jokes. My only feeling, because I liked Ragnarok, but in this one it went even further in that if you want to make it funny, you want to do the jokes, as long as it doesn't hinder the story,
Mhm.
as long as it doesn't start getting in the way of. And this love triangle between Thor and his two hammers, for example, it is hilarious.
It
But
is
at one
hilarious.
point, when he's standing there and the other one is slowly creeping into the picture, I was like, okay, it's not a character at this point in the movie. Like, we have plenty of characters. So I felt like that was over
Yes,
It
over.
was funny, but then you have like, I'm gonna chat with you on the boat. I'm gonna pour beer on you. Like I was like, okay.
And he pours the beer on him
And he pours the
too.
beer. And I was like, okay, this is now you're turning this into like legitimate characters, and that's pulling away from let's get this story going. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Well, but it also shows to it just goes to show his attachment because again, Thor's attachment to Mjolnir apparently he wasn't over it.
I mean, it is apparent because they make that point at least 5 times in the movie. That's what I'm saying. It's like by the time he's on the ship, I'm like, okay, we already get it.
And you would think by Endgame he was done with it because obviously the hammer ended up with Captain, and he was more interested in Stormbreaker because he was bigger and badder than Mjolnir, and he kind of he gave up on Mjolnir, gave it to Cap, where Mjolnir is now back, which is the older version of Mjolnir, but he's apparently still has this attachment for to the point that he even held it for a moment I think it's because it's to tell him that he's worthy or not. And he realizes that he still is worthy because he was able to hold Mjolnir.
Well, to be honest with you, to me, my take is that he was only interested in the old hammer because it was attached to his ex-girlfriend. It's like you don't want it
Possible.
to see somebody else using it, and she was using it in this whole like breakaway comeback.
Oh, she found new ways of doing it too, right?
Yeah, so it's like you dump someone, but the minute you see them on someone else's arm in better shape, looking good, then all of a sudden, I got the whole triangle thing, and it was funny. It is funny, but to the level in which they take it, it's like, okay, now that we're on the ship going to the Shadowland, okay, stop with the triangle.
Yeah, it was a little. It got to a little bit too far. What's your take on Valkyrie and how she was interpreted in this movie?
Love the actress, love the character.
Tessa Thompson.
I will say that I was disappointed that she really didn't play any pivotal part of the story, of driving the story. She was like a good sounding board. Let's do this and that. And she brought new costumes, right? At one point, like disguises. But at no point did she have, I felt, a real moment for her to shine.
Well, she played the same role as Darcy did, right? So she was the, dare I say, the best friend to Jane. So she was that conduit to bring them together in some way or another, right? And the thing is that she knew that they both were still into each other.
Well,
right?
But for a movie franchise, for the Marvel Universe to be working so hard to build up their female characters, this movie was, I thought, a great moment or great opportunity for Valkyrie to have one. First of all, God, this what is the blue guy called? Grok?
Korg.
Okay, so Korg, dial back Korg a little bit and let her get a moment to shine. I mean, I guess when she had his face behind her and she's doing a few stuff, but it's not that she had to get more airtime. It's like any of these moments that Jane Foster or Thor had to drive the story, which were quite a few. One of those moments I felt could have been given to Valkyrie to make her essential to how everything went. She is the king of Asgard,
Yeah. And again, going to the notion of why are they calling her king, right? This is one of those moments like, no one's questioning why she's being called king, not queen or anything like that. And again, they kind of touched on it. And when I mean kind of, they really went like one little scene where she meets up where, I love these little transitions you let me walk into. They meet. They meet Zeus because they ended up coming with a plan, and they said the only way we're going to stop Gore is to get other gods. So they devised a plan to go to the gods at what was the name of the place? It was called
Omnipotent City.
Omnipotent City, yes.
Yeah.
And in there, they all go, and there were some great gods there, like different types of gods. That
okay,
crazy looking.
Let's pause for a moment. And this dumpling, isn't that that it's from like a movie short, right?
I don't know where the dumpling comes from. I'm sure it comes from somewhere. If somebody's watching in the chat right now,
on
tell
Disney,
me where this dumpling king comes from.
On Disney Plus, there is a movie short that's only like 5 minutes long, I think, and there's no dialogue. It's all just like music or whatever. And it's about a dumpling that walks and talks and does a bunch of stuff. And I think that was the name of the movie. What he calls it, I think that was in the movie or the movie short.
Yeah.
But
And this was an
that
animated dumpling too. So this was a dumpling that was, even though there was a live action scene, when you saw the dumpling, it,
and
it it had one of those it had one of those bright eyes,
yeah,
and it
yeah,
was very
just
animated.
and that's how it is in that movie, in that dumpling. It looks animated like that. But this to me is a great example for in that the tone of the movie, in the fun and the lightheartedness, that it really, I just never felt that the stakes were high enough. Because if the god butcher was a threat to all the gods, then shouldn't you show the gods in a light to make it feel like the stakes are high? But they were all, and I'm conflicted because I loved Zeus. I mean, he was to me the funniest one
Russell
in the
Crowe,
movie.
right?
It wasn't how I would have gone with the character, but he was.
You know what? But it kind of, it's kind of fitting with what Greek mythology is. That way he was here. It was very fitting. Gu- Zeus was very much that type of person
But no one,
in Greek.
but did anybody in that whole place seem powerful? That's the only thing. Like
No,
all those gods, and not a single one of them seemed the least bit powerful.
not a single one except for Zeus, because again, it's like wait, he's gonna do his grand entrance. You
With
got to
his
see
with
the
his lightning bolt, that looked like it came from the dollar store. I was like, why does that thing look like it weighs like if it was made of plastic and hollow? I
the
just
fact
could.
that he spinned it up like a basketball was. But what was really great is, again, he knew what was going on, but he's giving his speech and their plans, like, yeah, the great orgy, and then he's making it a threat, right? Because he realized that they're there because no one was announced. He realized Thor is there, and he's like, he grabs Thor, and the whole scene where he flicks him, and we got to see Thor's back, a lot of his back, and we get the rest in peace Loki tattoo that he has. Again, little does he know, Loki's not dead. Because he apparently they mentioned it 3 times he died in the movie.
Yeah.
Um, but what was interesting enough is, after it was all said and done, Zeus approaches Thor and tells him, "Yes, I am scared." That to me was a big deal. The fact that Zeus is scared of what Gore could do. But he was like, "But I don't want nothing to do with it." That was like, interesting, you know. And
He
spoiler, he dies somewhat.
somewhat, I'm sure, and and I just kept thinking, like, there's all these gods in the stadium, and then when the little fight thing ensues, and they're doing this, and they're trying to
Mhm.
steal the lightning bolt, and then, or for that matter, they shoot Zeus. I'm like, all of these gods, and no one does anything, and it made them seem like almost like you're at the Colosseum of
Yeah, it really was.
Romans, right? So and but they go out of the way to say how all these are different gods of different things, so forth. So I was just expecting a little bit more. They even do the little pan back to the dumpling, and I was like, "Good God in heaven!" Like, but it just to me seemed odd in that, if anything, the only reason I felt that the stakes were high to like stop the god butcher was to save the Asgardians. They're the
Mhm.
only gods that seem to be really worth of any
Well,
value.
yeah, and what it showed was how powerful Thor really is. One of the things that we noticed throughout the entire movie, with the scene with Guardians of the Galaxy in the beginning of the movie, and this scene here as well, the level of power that Thor has is incredible, right? The fact that he could fight these characters, these this offense, pretty much by himself, right? Because even though Korg got involved, and even though Valkyrie got involved, and even though Mighty Thor got involved, he's the guy that's beating everybody up. You know what I mean? And it's like, that's how powerful Thor really is. Um, and it's a good way of looking at it. We do get Korg does get disintegrated. He only ends he dies for a moment. Turns out he became just a face, not even a head. He's just a face. And it turns out that he actually could regrow himself, so that's good. He's pretty much just like Groot in that way. Um, But Zeus dies, and Valkyrie takes the lightning bolt, and then we had that one moment where she kisses the hand of the maiden, and I was like, okay, that's your way of letting you know, yeah, this is why she's king, um, right? In some stupid
Yeah,
way,
yeah.
all right. And they go to face Gore, and we get to this third act, and in this third act, this is where you get to see Christian Bale at his finest. He is downright scary because it's just, first of all, his mannerisms is one thing. The way he speaks, that he has this, again, it's almost very Joker like in the way he was speaking, right? His the pitch of his voice will go very high, then he would go back to like his somber Batman sound. The range this man was doing in this scene was amazing, and the fact that he was right, and I love the fact that the Shadow Realm, everything's black and white because it's void of everything. So everything's black and white. It looks really cool. The fact that Mjolnir lit it up, so we had little specks of color, which I thought was really cool. And there was certain parts that was like, man, they put money in this thing,
Yeah.
you know. And it turns out that it was the reason, and we didn't even talk about Stormbreaker, but Stormbreaker was malfunctioning in some way. It was because Stormbreaker happens to be the key to open eternity, so Gore could do what he wants to do. Technically, in the comic books, that is the God Bomb storyline. It wasn't word for word, but that's pretty much what they were going to do. It that he was going to devise a bomb to kill all gods, and that's what his mission. That's why he had to. That's why they had to stop it. Um, but they have their match, they have their battle, and he did get to eternity. He did get there, and he thought we
Okay, and
got to, we got
now
to see eternity.
Eternity, I was like, what was the name of the place where Thanos went after he with the Soul Stone? That was
Oh yes, I know what you're talking about. I
it
don't
was
remember the name of the place, but I know what you're talking about.
right. So what where it reminded me of that in the same way that also when um T'Challa was
Hmm.
also when he would go to that
Yeah.
place from Wakanda, it was like just all this like water as the surface. And the
Hmm.
water's like maybe a few inches
Yeah.
high.
It's just enough to walk on, right? So
Yeah,
just
yeah. So it was that kind of recurring thing. I mean, it looked beautiful. I liked the way that they had it.
Mhm.
Um yeah, so I thought that was good. It was I thought it was when he goes through the portal to eternity, I was surprised that Thor and Jane were there as well.
Hmm. Yeah, they somehow happened to be there. I don't remember. We
Because
only
they
got to
didn't
see
they
it
didn't
once.
climb through the portal.
No, they didn't
Right.
climb through the portal. But before we even get there, I forget. I can't forget this. I don't want to miss out on this moment.
Children.
The children. Thor gets to the children. He does one of his Thor speeches, and I love the fact that he has the lightning bolt. He has Zeus's lightning bolt, right? That was given to him by Valkyrie. And oh man, there's so much to talk about, man. There's so much we're missing. Sorry, guys, we're missing a lot. Um, he gets the lightning bolt. He convinces Jane to stay because he knows that the more she uses Moania, the more it's closer that she's gonna die in her energy. So she makes the choice to stay. We knew that wasn't gonna last. But she makes the choice to stay. He goes. He tells the children that today you are going to be, and he speaks into the lightning bolt so that they could have the power of Thor. But the best part of it, temporarily, because that's how Jane gets it. The reason why she was able to become Mighty Thor is while they were together, he told Mjolnir to protect her. And that was Mjolnir saying thank doing the job. So that's why she was.
That is that how it happened in the comics? Because I thought that was a nice touch.
It was a nice touch, but I don't think that's how it happened in the comics. I'll have to check it out because in the comic books, what ended up happening, the Gore story came first, and in that Gore story, afterwards there's a crossover event called Original Sin, and in that story, I forgot who it was, tells Thor in his ear that Gore was right, and at that moment, Thor was no longer worthy. and he couldn't hold Mjolnir. So he was at that moment forward the unworthy Thor. They made a whole series out of it, and Jane ended up getting Mjolnir. How she gets Mjolnir, I don't remember that part. I will have to go back into the books to find out how it happened. But in this particular instance, she gets Mjolnir because Thor told Mjolnir to protect her. And this is the way he Mjolnir protect her. Um, and Thor gives his power to the children. The children all become Thor. I love the rabbit. That one rabbit that again, there was comedy. This scene actually worked. The comedy worked here. Because it's like
I thought so. I thought so. Yeah.
it was working here. And then we get to the scene where Gore, he talks about how he lost his child, and his child is resurrected, but he dies. And you could see that all he was losing his sensibility. Thus, the reason why he was turning white and gray and black. Eventually, they destroyed the sword, but the sword merged itself with Mjolnir, which was an interesting take. And unfortunately, not only did he die, so did Jane. So yes, Jane does die.
Yes.
hmm she dies, and we get the farewell for her pretty much, and Thor is back to he's back to New Asgard. Trying to remember how it fully wrapped up, but that's
Well, he's like a dad.
yes, Ness, that's what it was. So now he's taking care of Gord's daughter, and now she's love while he's thunder, and that's the reason for the term love and thunder. But she has the power of eternity inside her, which is very interesting where they're going to take this character.
Well, where they didn't take this character was to school, because apparently she's just running around.
Oh, she got a little attitude too, doesn't she?
And she calls him Uncle Thor, I think. So
Uncle Thor, yeah.
So it ends on the note of her almost being a sidekick, right? For all intents and purposes.
Yeah.
Is what it with their little adventure. That's what it kind of looked like.
He gets a costume and she still doesn't. Why she didn't get a costume? I'm just saying.
I thought that was strange too. I'm like, he gets a costume, but she doesn't. And it just seemed. I mean, if she has eternity inside of her, then is it really child neglect? I have an issue with sidekicks, especially someone that young.
You're not a Robin fan, I take it.
I let me tell you something. Robin's one of my favorite characters, and Damien is more grown than some of the adult superheroes. But it just, for the purpose of the movie, and she's a attorney, and they're all gods or whatever, so forth, and it's all, I'm like, it's well and good. But she, it just wasn't clear. I'm sure they'll kind of explore that more when Thor returns. But to leaving him on that note where he's, has now a solid look, he's more classic, as opposed to
now he's a father figure.
Now he's a father figure and stuff like that. So that kind of ages him a little bit, I thought.
Yeah.
But
that's okay, because they are building towards something like the Young Avengers.
Yes.
Because we're seeing a lot of young characters.
Oh my god! I mean, from the jump, there was always like slowly but surely pulling all of these kids, and then once the blip happened, they can now have all these children be grown when they weren't before, to explain why they're so much older now, but it's still the same actor, right?
Yep.
So
let's get to the end credits, because everybody wants to know about the end credits. That's what everybody comes to watch these videos for, right? So we get our first mid-credit scene. It turns out Zeus was not dead at all. He was just wounded. And he makes a vow that the people of Earth are no longer fearful of them. And he's like, we're more like jokes to them. And now he's like, okay, so I'm going to get back at him. And this is where it is revealed that his son, which I don't have a picture of, but I do have a picture of
Brett Goldstein. Right.
Yep, exactly. And he is Hercules. So what do you think about this take? Because I am not familiar with this actor. I'll be honest. He's from Ted Lasso, I think it is.
He's from Ted Lasso, and he is in the show Ted Lasso, which is a comedy. He's the one character who never tries to be funny You know, he's very, very serious, but in his seriousness, he is actually ends up being funny. So the casting for me was perfect. I mean, when I saw him, I could not stop laughing. I was like, what a great person to put opposite Chris Hemsworth. Because even in the movie, at one point they talk about like all the different gods, and they mention Hercules.
They do mention
And
Hercules, so his
Hercules
name
was in
thrown.
the Avengers, you know, in the comics and so forth. I remember, you know, that character, and liking him. But yeah, so I thought that for me, that end credit scene brought me more joy than anything else in the movie.
Yeah. So and the costume. I wish I had a photo to show you guys, but I don't, unfortunately. I look. Trust me, I search. They're keeping it very tight lit, but the costume is so accurate. It's the same costume. I was shocked that they did that. I'll be honest, because that is a hard costume to pull off.
And you know, Marvel, I got to give them credit for like when you are trying to put forward all these movies and not able to use the mutants, right? Which is like I want to say 2/3.
Coming soon.
They really took their time to bring out all these gems of characters and stuff like that and introduce them when they would have the most impact. They didn't try to rush it, even though they were dealing with a very limited supply. And for them to introduce Hercules this way, I really thought I can't imagine any better way to have done it.
Yeah, I agree. There is a second end credit, and it is of out of all people, and I don't have a photo of it, unfortunately, but I'll just put this one back up. The actual end credit is Jane Foster, and she made it to Valhalla, but she's introduced by who I was shocked to see, Heimdall, and he welcomes her into Valhalla. Now the real question is, will she stay in Valhalla?
Well, will he stay there? Like both of them are great characters that can be used for so many.
Well, his son is taking over the mantle, so Axel.
Oh my god, yeah, Axel. I did like the music in the movie. I thought the music
A lot of Guns N' Roses.
a lot, but I'm not mad at it. I thought it was great, and then also the music played on the little speaker, which was a little
the little Mary J. Blige.
Yeah, Mary J. Blige and Sierra. Sierra was the other song that they had played on it. But yeah, so it's interesting that what they're doing with they're just opening up that the Thor franchise, the Thor world is just getting bigger and bigger, and I really like what they're doing with it. I thought it was in that sense. I thought it was good. Yeah, I mean,
yeah. So I think, and we have the end credit with Thor will return.
Yeah, didn't say in what though,
and they didn't say which Thor.
This is true. Because I remember when they said Doctor Strange will return, it ended up being he returned in a Spider-Man movie and not necessarily in his own movie until much later. So they didn't really specify, which is fine.
Yeah, so that's fine. And because again, this is one of those things I think with Chris Helms where he has now played this character longer than everyone else has now, right? Dare I say more than Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans, right?
Right.
So his character, you thought a lot of people thought that he was going to pass the mantle to Natalie Portman's character, but that wasn't the case. It turns out it worked the other way around. There was a lot of discussion about her taking over the mantle, but overall, I enjoyed the movie a lot. I was a big fan of. I did like the comedy. I have to admit, I am a big fan of the comedy. I love Taika Waititi. There's not a single thing of Taika Waititi I don't like. What We Do in the Shadows. I don't know if you ever get the chance to watch that.
No, but I saw the preview for it in the theater, and I was like, "This show looks fun." What network is it?
It's on FX. But watch the movie. So there's a movie. Oh. So there's a movie that Taika Waititi made. It's one of his early films. It's not them. It's not the characters in the show. It is set in that same universe, though.
Okay.
So it's the same story. It's the same story through a different set of cast.
Okay.
But it's so good. You got to watch. If you get a chance, watch the movie, then go into the TV show. It's a comedy, like a typical sitcom that you could jump in at any given time and you don't have to worry about it. but watch it in chronological order, and you'll get like you get some good nuggets, and stuff. You got to watch the council video. So in season one, towards the end, there's a council video
The
where
count.
they meet the council of vampires, right? And in this particular, and again, now this a little bit of a spoiler. There's a lot of cameo vampires. So think of people that played vampires,
Oh, so many.
right? Think of them, and that's what this episode is.
Okay.
So I'm not telling you who's going to be in it, but good. But there's your homework. Watch it. I promise you, you love it.
Oh no, I'm gonna check that out. I'm definitely check
It's so fun, and it just gets funnier. Like it's so stupid. It's stupid. It's like stupid funny. That's how funny it is, right? And it's Taika Waititi humor. But back to Thor: Love and Thunder. Um, if you were to rate it on a scale of 1 through 5, 5 being the best, what would you rank it?
Okay, and
And why? And why?
and why? So I when I was watching your Stranger Things one, and you were like doing the ratings, I said, you know what? I 1 through 5, and you said you don't like doing the points, and I don't either. I'm like,
I don't
let's
like. I'm not a point
commit
guy.
to it. So my rating system, which is where from 1 to 5, 1 would mean that it's trash, right? I would stop
You could give a 0. You could give a 0.
or give a 0, and then 2
That's
would
real
be
trash.
2 is if I was really let down. I was like, 1 might be Morbius. I never saw, but that's certainly how people were talking about it, right?
I
But
saw Mobius.
yeah, but then on 2, I was very disappointed. I was let down. 3 is where I went to the movie. I'm glad I saw it. I liked it. And number 4 is which is the rating I would give it, is that when it comes out on Disney Plus, I will watch it again. I like that. But 5 for me is like, I want to go back to the theater and watch this thing again. I will pay the money. That's me. Like Endgame, and people say we're going to see Endgame again after I saw that first time. Absolutely, I have no problem seeing that movie a couple of times. So I would give this a 4. And the reason that that it doesn't get the 5 is that it didn't cinematically. There wasn't anything that I was like lost. Like I have to like. I mean, the best thing I would say is like everything everything everywhere all at once. Like that movie was such a fantastic movie. It had so much stuff going on.
So much good stuff about that movie.
Yeah, I was like, I have to watch it again. Just like same with Endgame. I was just so blown away. But for this one, I was able to follow the story just fine. I thought that the humor was good. It was funny. At parts they overshot it, but I don't hold that against them because humor is not an exact science.
It's a bigger, badder situation. It was like it's a sequel to a sequel, right? So
exactly.
It's like we got to be bigger, we got to be funnier. So they do try to over.
Yeah, they try to, and which is all fine and well. But yeah, so I give it a 4. Would someone say should I go see it in the theater? I would say yes for sure.
Cool. Yeah, all your points are very similar to my points. I do believe it is a fun movie. It is a movie to watch. I'm the guy that's going to see it over and over because I just like to see movies over. So I can't rate myself. I can't do my ratings based off of that, right? So I don't base it off of how many times am I going to watch it again because I know I'm going to watch it tons of times. I will say this much: it is not better than Ragnarok. Ragnarok is a much cleaner film, right? However, the comedy that's on point is on point. So I give it that much. So you still have that blend of comedy, and again, the comedy's throughout the entire picture, like from the beginning to the very end. There are only a few scenes that are serious, but I have to say 80% of the movie is a comedy. 80. That's my take. 80% of the movie is a comedy, while the other 20% is like a gore scene or a Jane Fonda, a Fonda.
It might even be higher because when you try to think of the scenes that weren't comedy, you have to think kind of hard.
You have to think, right? You have to think kind of hard when it was comedy, but the reveals were great. Christian Bale kills it, literally, right? He kills it in every scene he's in. His acting chops is something that, if he was nominated, I wouldn't be surprised. That's how good he was. That's how I saw his performance. That it was that good that it's actually, I think it's worthy enough for a nomination. Will it? Only time will tell. I will be surprised if it does, but I would nominate it. But with that said, those scenes where the comedy was just overtaken took me out of what I thought it should have been. And for that, I have to lower the grade that I would have normally been. I actually had a different grade than the one I did now. I originally said it was going to be a 4, but I changed my mind to a 3. So it's a
And
3 out of
I
5.
originally had a 3, and then I decided to bump it up to the 4.
Yeah, so I ended up doing the 3 out of 5 Izzy's simply because when it came to the comedy, it was a little too much. And I love a good comedy, but where Ragnarok succeeded is when to blend that comedy with seriousness.
I would actually venture to say, other than of course when Zeus blows off his clothes. Okay, so
Flick.
yeah. So other than that, it felt like it was more of a kids movie than an adult movie.
Oh, there was a few scenes. The anything that Zeus was in a kids movie. The orgy. I
I mean,
could
it
just
comes to
imagine
orgy,
it.
but I was like, in
Well,
terms of like,
imagine a kid say, "Mom, Dad, what's an orgy?"
but
I know that conversation is gonna happen.
the breadth of the whole movie, the whole scope of it, how those little kids were, and then they end up fighting, and the bunny and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. And to me, the vibe of it, I felt like, yeah, kids would watch this and absolutely love it, including the comments with the orgies and stuff. They would think, oh, they would make it feel like it's so grown. But I felt like it was more, the kids would think it's a 5 out of 5. Kids would really love the movie and the pacing and the jokes and this and that, whatever. So fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's where some of that humor, I don't think kids would have a problem with it, whereas adults would,
Yeah,
about it being overdone.
yeah, and again, it goes back to that notion. It's like, when you have Gore there, a joke about how he looks is one thing, but like the continuation of it, or when you have Jane and Thor talking about her cancer, and they're making light of it in that weird way. That was something that I don't that took me off a bit. But I still love the movie. I think it was a great movie. I highly recommend anybody who hasn't seen it to go see it. If you're watching this video right now at this point and you want to know what's the score, um, yeah, go watch the movie. Don't let us tell you how good the movie is. You know what I mean? Um, Achilles, my man, where can people find you?
They can find me on Planet Achilles, ACHILLES, planetachilles.com. I'm also Instagram, Facebook, stuff like that. Planet Achilles has it's an online store with a bunch of gear with books and sweatshirts, hoodies, bags, stuff like that, where alcohol drinks and kids drinks, walk and talk and do funny things.
All right, Achilles, let me put you to the side here, guys. So there you have it, guys. That is our spoiler review for Thor: Love and Thunder. Go check it out for yourself. Go see if it's the same score I gave it. I gave it 3 out of 5. Achilles gave it 4 out of 5. But for you, it could be a 5 out of 5. For you, it could be a 0 out of 5. Again, it's just the number, guys. Until next week, I will see you at the Izzyverse. Bye.